Hey guys, I'm Steven Farnsworth.
And I'm Grant Babbitt.
And you're listening to It's a Dad Thing podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of It's a Dad Thing podcast. Steven, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a long week, but you know, I'm glad to be here doing this.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. I know as dads, we don't get a lot of opportunities to just step away from the family and talk. So we kind of have this fun little built-in excuse of a podcast.
Yes, yeah, that's it. Yeah. I will say we just got home from doing a dinosaur like drive-through thing called Jurassic Quest. Not at all what I am like. I pictured like a Jurassic Park where you drive through and there's all this like crazy atmosphere and all this stuff. I mean, really, it's just dinosaurs in a parking lot, but there's like an audio tour with it. And actually the kids were like, this is awesome. So like, I dug it. It was so much fun.
Okay. Then you're good. Yeah.
But I'm so glad we looked at a video beforehand because we're like, what is this? Like we bought tickets back in December. Let's just double check, make sure we're doing the right thing. Yeah. And then we watched the video and we're like, oh, that's it? Okay. And then so our expectations went from here to like here. And then it was like, okay, we're not doing Jurassic Park. It's Jurassic Quest. Right. So, you know, we were good. And the kids, they had a fun time. So it was a fun time. It's a good family weekend. Yeah.
Good. Well, and for those of you that are watching, we actually have a third person on with us, who's a good friend of mine, David. David, how are you doing, man?
Man, I'm good. Good to be on. Thank you guys for inviting me to be a part of this podcast.
Of course. And
yeah, man.
David, where are you coming from today?
I'm coming from the great state of Oklahoma.
That's right.
Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, just near Tulsa, Oklahoma. So there you go. Midwest, baby.
Yeah.
There you go. Midwest. Yeah. And you guys, wait, are you are you Sooner or a Cowboy?
Do you see this? You can't see. This is a USC shirt here. So
I see that.
Interesting fact, I was actually born in California. And so my allegiances stay out west.
Okay.
I love the San Francisco 49ers. I'm a USC Trojans fan. I graduated from the University of Tulsa, so I'm not a Sooner or a Cowboy. I'm a Golden Hurricane. So there you go.
Well, just so you know.
Well, and except for one school though, that at least from what I remember, that's East Coast.
That's true. Yeah. I love Duke University.
Oh,
Duke University is so my parents were in the military. Uh-huh. And when I was third grade, I got the opportunity to stay up late to watch a Duke basketball game. Mm-hmm. Happened to be the game that Bobby Hurley and Christian Laettner upset UNLV to make it to their first NCAA title game. Mm-hmm. And so I've been a Duke fan since. So that's my one East Coast, love there. So
I don't blame you. I mean, those are some good years of Duke. I'm a KU guy. I'm sure. I don't know if Stevens. Oh yeah, come on. What is that? We're having a down year. You can't all me on a down year. We're all having an all year. All the Blue Bloods are having a down year this year.
They are.
Yeah. No, I'm a Jayhawk through and through. Listeners can't see it, but I've got Jayhawks tattooed on me right there. I'm serious, but I have a friend from down in Wichita who is a huge Duke fan. So I hear you. I don't blame you. But I mean, if you want to know where like the home of all the Blue Bloods come from, it's clearly Lawrence, Kansas. I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't have any specific correlation to Duke other than like Duke saw what we did and they're like, hey, we want to be Kansas. But not really. But Kentucky and North Carolina, right? The other two of the four Blue Bloods, they both come from KU. Right? Oh, okay. I don't know if you know that. KU is literally the home of basketball, right? I know it's Springfield, Massachusetts, but the rules are in Lawrence, Kansas. But the home of basketball, home of Blue Blood basketball, right? As we know it, Rupp Arena, Adolph Rupp played for the Jayhawks.
Oh, okay. We're going to
and then Dean Smith here. Also played for the Jayhawks.
Okay.
I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there.
Quick question. Yeah. Who was Duke's first national title against?
Well, I'm guessing it's KU since you're the way you're saying it. I'm guessing.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm guessing. Now, what year was that?
1991, right?
1991. Okay. All right. I forget. I you know what? I forget. Duke is like new money when it comes to blue bloods. Like they're like, you know what I mean? Like the years of Krzyzewski, that is the program. Krzyzewski is the program.
Yeah.
Which
100%.
I don't blame him. The guy's incredible. It's amazing. You guys have had some amazing talent come out of there.
Yes.
You know, there's like half of the NBA, I feel like, are Duke players, which is crazy.
Yes.
And they're all really great.
It's like Alabama.
Yeah, exactly.
Duke
Football,
and Kentucky.
In football.
They make up every NBA roster, right?
Exactly. But you know what? I will say, 49ers, I've always been a fan. Joe Montana was my great American hero. He was my report in 5th grade, my great American hero. And then I always loved Alex Smith. And those were, two San Francisco quarterbacks that got traded to Kansas City, right? I'm a Chiefs fan. So I'm sorry about the year before last, but, not really. Not really sorry.
That hurt.
Well, you can go back next year like we did and then just get hurt all over again. So, it just depends. I always tell my kids, you can love sports, but the sports will not love you back. That's right. That's how it works.
And David, I forgot to give you a heads up of how much Grant loves Kansas City. So I didn't do a proper prep.
Yeah, I ambushed you already. Welcome the first 5 minutes. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
but I've got much love. We're all Midwest, right? So I'm all for it. So which part of California were you born in?
I was born actually in Rancho Cordova, which is Sacramento.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very nice. Very nice. We're out here in Pasadena area. So that's where we are. And we've been out here for 9 years or so now. And yeah.
Met my wife in Pasadena in 2000. Spent 2 summers in Pasadena. Actually spent a summer in LA doing some volunteer work at Central City Church of the Nazarene, which was on 6th and San Pedro next to the Union Rescue Mission. So
yes,
we had some good memories and some life-changing experiences out there. So I love it.
I'm sure.
Well, and tell us a little bit about yourself, David. I know that you've been married for a long time and have a few boys. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, as I said earlier, I met my wife out in Pasadena. She's actually from Ohio. We've been married 18 years. We have 3 sons. We have a 15-year-old who is 6'4", sophomore at Broken Arrow High School. And then we have a set of twins who are 10 and in the 5th grade. And we're here in Oklahoma. We both work for Broken Arrow Public Schools, which is the largest school district in the state of Oklahoma. And just living the dream, man, staying busy, raising 3 sons, 2 dogs, and, growing gracefully. So
I thought you were going to tell me that the 10-year-olds were 6'2" already. I felt like it was coming next.
Yeah.
They're 5 feet tall. They're not far, but funny story.
Well, and other. Yeah,
I was just going to say, each of my sons, the first shirt that I wore, when I was a resident advisor at Southern Nazarene University. My freshman, students or whatever, they gave me for my birthday a Duke hoodie. And so I've had that thing for over 20 years. And with each of my sons, when they were born, that was what I wore so that they would be, impressioned with Duke University. So they're Duke fans as well.
I was gonna say, are they actually Duke fans or they
are rivals? So we all love Duke basketball. My oldest son loves Oregon. He just loves Oregon sports. So he's probably lost. My younger two, they go back and forth between USC and Ohio State when it comes to other sports because my wife is a Buckeye. None of them have gravitated towards my alma mater, which was TU. I went to Southern Nazarene, did not graduate from there. Actually transferred and finished at TU, and none of them have caught onto that bandwagon yet. So there you go.
Bill Self's first head coaching job was Tulsa.
I know this.
Just throwing it out there.
Oh yeah.
Huh?
And fun little fact, whenever I was in high school, my dad had some kind of connection to Bill Self. And when I was in a shooting slump, after practice one day, Bill Self met with me and my dad for like
Wow.
15 minutes. And he gave me basically like a little pep talk.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God.
Well, you can't blame
is...
your bad shooting on him though. I mean, like, you look.
No, he helped. I was shooting bad. And then little 15 minutes with Bill Self, and all the sins are washed away.
Yeah, that's it. That's funny.
Well, and also, David, you not only, play basketball and stuff, but you also do jujitsu, right?
So I coach basketball for 5th grade team, and then I do my son's AAU team in the summer and off season. But I love jujitsu. Like, that is probably my second favorite thing in the whole world. My first favorite thing is fishing. Second favorite thing is jujitsu. I love it. It is a metaphor for the dad life, to be completely honest, right? Because jujitsu is all about learning how to deal with adversity, and to be good at it, unfortunately you learn a lot through failure, right? And so you get better. You start off knowing nothing, right? And through trial and error, you figure out some things, and then you add a little bit of technique or add a little bit of wisdom, and you get better and better and better. And eventually it becomes second nature. But yeah, that is one of my passions, man. I'm going to show you something for your vision. See that finger right there? Mm-hmm. I can't straighten it. That's my,
I was going to say, yeah, it doesn't look straight.
That's my broken pinky there. Happened a year ago, one of my scars, but you said I'm never going to get it straightened. That's just a reminder of how much I love what I do. So
it's a battle scar, right?
It's a battle scar. That's right.
Yeah.
And what got you into that? Like, what was there some kind of, I feel like that's something that you don't really fall into.
So fits right into what we're talking about, actually. My son, my oldest son, his name is Justice, he's gifted. He's very good at the things that he does. And one of the things that my wife and I felt like is that he needed to be into something that would challenge him. So we got him into a karate program through the YMCA. And that was the first experience of being challenged at something and having to do it over time. That karate instructor was great. My son and I actually got our black belts through him. And he introduced us to jiu-jitsu. He said, hey, man, don't stop here. You need to continue to grow and to develop and to seek, new challenges. And so he connected me with my current instructor, Blake Hayes. And, man, I thought, I'm a black belt in karate. I was young at the time. I thought, man, I can, no one can handle me. And Blake and his crew really taught me that there's so much more to learn. I mean, it was a humbling experience. I think the first class I went to, I got tapped by everybody. And it was quick. I mean, it was just like this, and I was so tired, and I was so humbled because I thought I was strong and thought I was athletic. And I was like, I got to learn this, right? Whatever these guys are doing, I've got to pick up on it, because I was getting beat by guys that were smaller than me, guys that looked like they were out of shape and couldn't run, a mile. I mean, I was just getting tapped by everybody. And I told myself, I said, whatever it is that they've learned, I need to learn it. And so that began the process for me of getting in on this journey. And like I said, it's become a metaphor for my life, dealing with adversity and dealing with, just the challenges, of everyday life and stuff.
So where are you at on the rank of jiu-jitsu, your son and you? Are you both still working the way up, or are you both have you achieved black belt?
No. I'm far from it. I'm okay. Blue belt. So fairly, okay. I'd be like second level, I guess.
Okay.
It's taken me 4 years to get there. So, and then my son he's just focused on basketball. So he's given it up. So, he got me connected. And then went a different direction, but it's still something I do, and love it. So,
very cool.
That's great. And what we talked about a little bit on the phone earlier was really this idea of parenting from fear. Like what does that really mean to you? And like when somebody says parenting from fear, what kind of triggers in your mind?
So when we first talked about this idea and explored it, like one of the things that I started thinking about as a dad is just kind of what my motivations are. And so if you look at just the experience that I described for you guys, getting them into the martial arts program, but also going through it myself, right? Part of that is that need, and I think that desire for every father to be able to say, I can keep my family safe, right? Mm-hmm. You want to know that you can protect them from things that are not good, and that you can limit the negativity that they'll have to experience in their life. And so I started looking at my journey and just started looking at the things that kind of shape the way that I am, and I realized that I think for me, I think a lot of my parenting has been parenting out of fear, parenting from a place of not wanting my kids to have to go through the same things that I have gone through. And particularly the negative things, right? And let me just kind of backtrack if I can. Both of my parents were in the military. And I think that's important because when your mom and dad are in the military, the idea of having two parents in your home, it's not really there, right? There would be different times when my dad would be, doing some training away from the family for a week or two. My mom would be in the same situation. And so my whole life, younger childhood, we moved a lot, but we also had a nanny who kind of was around and raised us in our daytime, daytime lives, basically. And so, unfortunately, a lot of the things I learned about the world, I learned from my friends, from being out in the streets, from being out, at the houses of friends and who were in similar situations like me. And so, the trouble that we got into or the things that we did, we learned, and we're fortunate enough that they didn't end up in bad situations for us. But, parenting from fear, I think I have to throw in the dynamic of also just kind of the social context that I am in, being an African-American father, and kind of growing up with the impression of race, and the impact of race on how life was for me personally. So just as an example, I remember my parents really impressing upon me heavily that I had to be very careful about how I spoke to people and about how I conducted myself. And we were at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, so it's in the South. But just that idea that, people are going to view you differently because of your skin color. That was something that was real for us, and for me. And it's something that I still think I carry on into my parenting, teaching my boys, hey, you've got to be careful because people are going to perceive you a certain way. It's not fair necessarily. It's not the way that I want it to be. But until the world changes, it's something that I have to give to my sons. And so one of the things that I think that I do is I probably tend to be more harsh and more strict with them, because of my fears of what can happen. I don't want you running out and doing this. I don't want you to act this way. I don't want you to dress this way because I don't want it to have a negative outcome for you, And so that's definitely something that I recognize. It's also something that I don't know what to do with, right? Because I can't change it. I can't change the world. I can't change their experience. And so it's kind of a narrative that I'm locked into. And it definitely informs the way I interact with my boys. So.
Yeah, well, I understand where you're coming from when you're talking about parenting from fear. Obviously, I do not have the same experience as you do, because I obviously have, light skin tone, and I haven't had to have that conversation with my children. No one's had that conversation with me growing up. I mean, there's that amount of privilege that I just never had to experience that. And, it is interesting and eye-opening, this time that we're in now, where it seems that people are acknowledging what's been going on for years and years and years. So it is an interesting thing too, because we've talked about this, and not so much parenting from fear, but when we're talking about like race with our kids, the school that we go to is like my child is white, but he's part of the minority in the child here, or in the student body here, right? And that wasn't on accident. Like, we want to make sure that they look at everybody and just say, like, these are people. And the other thing too, that has always been one of those things that I've heard people talk about, and I'm hoping it's changing now, but people would have that colorblind mentality of like, oh no, I don't see color. No, it's okay to see color.
Yes,
you should see color, and you should celebrate it. But it's the problem comes in is when we're talking about, like you're talking about your boys, they're growing up as, Black men in this country where they've been persecuted and all these different things that have happened. And there's got to be a level of stress and fear that is clearly built into that someone like me or Steven are not going to experience, because it's just something we've never had to deal with in our life. So it is fascinating to hear what you have to say and your experience in that, because for me, when I think of like fear and parenting from fear, my experience is completely from, I grew up dealing with different kind of depression and anxieties and things like that, where I just think, oh, I don't want my kids to go through that experience of like dealing with all the anxiety and depression. But I've never once had that thought of like what you've had. Like I've never had that same kind of experience. And, it's really interesting to hear you say that. I want to learn more about it, because I also want to teach my kids, aside from the fear and anxiety, I want to make sure that they do understand that, we are open to everybody. And this has happened. You can't say this hasn't happened. If anybody tries to, whitewash something and say this didn't happen in your past, know that it did, and it still does. And it, as far as we know, will still continue until it's changed. So I've been trying. Oh no, we just, just like everybody else, like Steve and I know we've talked about this a lot, is like we've tried to instill this in our kids so that as they grow, they can be the ones that are, instilling that change in their children too. And hopefully it's going to go forward, but
yeah. So
it's tough.
One of the things that I have heard during this time, it has been an interesting, year for us. I mean, just in terms of the pandemic, but also just, some of the social movements that we had. And I felt like it was really interesting because I mean, there was a part of me that I grieved heavily when I started seeing a lot of the protests, when George Floyd was killed and stuff like that. But I grieved, I guess, for a different reason. Obviously, I hate seeing people get killed. I hate seeing Black people get killed. I hate seeing that. But I grieved because for me, it just felt like it was going to be a thing where people will have an emotional reaction, right? There'll be apologies for things that you can't control, right? I heard a lot of talk about white privilege and people were apologizing for being white. And I'm like, that's not it. Like, don't apologize for these things. You didn't choose it any more than I chose to be in the situation that I'm in. What I was sad about was the fact that it would have its emotional outburst, right? And then what would happen is that we would progress on and people would forget that, it ever happened. And that's what, I'm sorry guys, my phone is going off and I didn't realize I had it on. And so, when I watched a lot of this and I watched, just people's reactions, the George Floyd situation was really bad, obviously, because it ended up with someone dying. But the one that probably bothered me the most, I don't know if you guys will remember the instance of the lady who was in the park and there was the bird watcher and they had that encounter where she ended up calling the police and creating a narrative that was not grounded in reality.
Yeah.
That one to me is the one that I wish would have gotten more pub, because that one highlights the disparity, and it highlights the reason why I have those fears as a Black parent, right? Mm-hmm. Because you recognized in that situation that, like it or not, there is a bias or a belief, right? A propensity to believe that people with dark skin, a propensity to believe that Black men are more dangerous and more aggressive. Mm-hmm. And she was clearly aware of it, right?
Yeah.
When we transfer that to what it means to parent, my son is 6'4". I'm 6'1", so he's taller than me, right? And he wears his hair, he's got the basketball haircut, is what I said. They all have like the unkept top, and they, it's just shaggy and whatnot. He's taller than me. He's a man in terms of his body size, right? But he's also a kid.
Yeah.
Right. When he does the things that a kid might do or a teenager might do, and that you live in this climate or this context where people have that propensity to see people of color as being more aggressive or more prone to do harm, he may be acting like a kid, but it's interpreted totally different. And so, hence, a lot of times with me, I'm having to say, no, you can't do that. No, you can't go out of the house in your hoodie and sweatpants. I need you to put some jeans on, right? Mm-hmm. I need you to make sure that you don't have your earpieces in your ear, and that you can hear people, and that you speak clearly to people when they talk to you, right? These are things that, people say, well, your boys have such good manners. They have good manners, but they're also like survival mechanisms, right?
Yeah, they're beyond the normal, right. Like, make sure you look people in the eyes. That's and right. Stuff. There's a deeper meaning beyond just being right. polite to someone.
And I feel badly as a parent. My wife, I should say this too. My wife she's white, so we're in a biracial family. So she brings a whole different dynamic, not having to think about race before until she married me. And now what happens is the experience that is mine is also her experience because it affects her sons, Mm-hmm. And so that's been an interesting learning process as well. But, I recognize that it's not necessarily a healthy place to be as well for me as a parent. And that's something that I've had to work through and still continue to work through. Because there are times when I'm like, man, I just want to put this bubble around them and protect them. And what I realize is some of this I gotta just accept, like, they're gonna be kids, and I've got to learn to accept and allow that to happen, So kind of heavy, I know. I'm sorry about that, guys.
No,
it's good though. But I mean, it's very similar to like a conversation that I had with Sarah, my wife, early on in our marriage, when she was talking about going to this grocery store and how she would always have her keys between her fingers going to the car. And I had, being a white male, like I just never had that experience before. And I was like, why would you do that? Because I just walk into whatever parking structure or whatever, and I never even think twice about it. And then when we had kids, it amplified that conversation, of like, she's with two little ones, and which one do you put in the car first? And how do you, how do you do that part when they're so little and she's by herself and she's very vulnerable? It's and that, I think what is been interesting for my family through, like, I would say this last year or so, is just the amount that it's brought it to the forefront and brought more education to myself and my family. As far as like, I knew that there was a disparity. Like, I would be like not completely unaware if I didn't know that there was some kind of disparity, but I didn't realize the subtle nature some, like, yes, there were big actions taken, but the subtle nature over the last like hundreds of years to confirm these biases, and not in a fair way at all, but like to subtly bring these things more and more and more, I think has been crazy to me, as far as going back and actually, you know, reading and listening and trying to understand, you know, the really what's happening. And it's been very saddening. It's been very you know, hard to admit, but like you said, it's like I don't want to apologize for me being a white male, but it did also make me reflect, well, how do I see people? What actions am I taking, and what things can I do for me, besides just posting something on social media? You know, what can I actually do that can actually be helpful?
Well, and so it's also interesting because I felt like the experiences that have happened and been brought to consciousness, really over the last, I mean, you could look back 5 years. There's been, you know, multiple instances of kind of these horrific crimes that have been happening publicly, right?
Yeah.
You know, you think about the Philando Castile recording too, where, you know, girlfriend is recording it, kid is in the car, and literally has to watch her father, you know, pass away in this manner, and just think about the restraint and the experience of that, right? The trauma of that, and then I connect it to other things that we don't talk about as much. Like, think about the experience of women. This is something that my eyes have been open to, right? The vulnerability that I feel when I travel from Tulsa to Columbus, Ohio, and we make these stops. And at every time we make a stop at a gas station, the first thing that runs through my mind is, do I see anybody who looks like me? Because if I don't, I won't stop there, right? It's a safety mechanism. And then you think about, well, women deal with this all the time, right? This is the closest thing to understanding kind of the injustices and the vulnerabilities that women in our society experience as well. And so it's really kind of been eye-opening. I don't apologize, you know, you don't make an apology for being white. I don't apologize for being a male. What we do is we recognize that there are some things that are wrong, and then it becomes our responsibility to act, right? It becomes our responsibility to advocate, and to make sure that in our circles, that we're living in the fullness of that reality, you know, thinking about how your actions, your attitudes, your support of certain things impacts other people, you know. So it's really been an eye-opening thing, just to think about it and to recognize like these experiences, and to think about, you know, not just myself, but you know, women, just as an example, or immigrants, as an example, and to think about their lives and their experiences, and how fear may also be an underlying motivation behind some of their responses or manners of interacting in the world. So, you know, it's a journey, man. But I wanted to ask you guys, what are some things that you guys are afraid of? Like, as fathers, what are you afraid that you might not be teaching your children?
Well, first off, I'm afraid of everything when it comes to being a father. 100%. You know, I mean, imposter syndrome is one thing that pops up in my head constantly. You know, not just in work and in life, whatever, but also just being a dad. Like, I keep thinking, like, when are my kids going to turn around, and look at me, and realize I'm not the hero they think I am? Right? When is that moment? Because we've all been through moments like that. And it's heartbreaking to see your parents as this, like, on a pedestal, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, you're normal. Like, you're just human beings like me, and you don't know everything, and you're full of fear too. You know, that's there. But I mean, for me, I mean, gosh, how much time do we have? I mean, I think about, you know, I have 4 kids. And so I will say, just on a daily basis, them being this age, My fear, and I feel like coronavirus and COVID and stuff is now just an excuse, but we basically say like, hey, you can't break your arm now, right? We're not going to the hospital right now because of everything that's been going on for, the last year plus. So, so for me, it's just like, I know that's an excuse though. When I say, I don't want you to run around and climb and be kids, we have 3 boys. We have 3 boys
Right.
and 1 daughter. And I know that it's good for them to like wrestle and find boundaries with each other. I know that logically. But when I see it and I go, don't do that. Somebody might get hurt. Somebody might get, and the problem is so David, I've, when I was about 18, I got hit with anxiety, where I just went from being like this invincible kid to all of a sudden I have anxiety that's just crippling for years. I mean, I didn't get really help with it for about 8 years. So I dealt with it for so long. And part of my fear has been, it's a good thing in being a parent that you deal with anxiety because it's a worst case scenario thing, right? So I can look and I can see a scenario with my kids, and for the most part, I can go, okay, that's a hazard, that's a hazard, that's a hazard, that's a hazard, shouldn't do that. Okay, now I can keep them safe, right? But the flip side of that is when I verbalize that to my kids, hey, you can get hurt. Hey, don't do that. You can get hurt. Hey, you can really hurt somebody. Hey, did it? Then all of a sudden I'm projecting all of my anxieties on them. And
that is
now
so
I
well
see,
said.
And I see them, I see it like my oldest right now. We're literally having conversations about panic attacks, and he's 7. And I didn't even know that was a thing until I was, well into my teens. And so part of that is me thinking I have failed as a father because I've pushed my anxieties on you, and you're supposed to be a kid. And so that's a huge failure or a huge fear for me, that I notice that I'm parenting out of fear in that regard. And then the fear, of course, is now that I'm doing this, how do I get out of it? And I think I've gone too far, right? So then it's just this cycle that just keeps going on.
That's so well said, man. I mean, because I feel like I can relate on so many levels. Like, that's so interesting. So interesting.
Thank you. It's I'm sorry that you can relate. It's no fun. It's really no fun. Steven, what about you?
Yeah. I mean, I think that Sarah has enough fear for their safety, I think, for a few people. So I don't really fear for them in that way. I think because I think that when I think back to like my childhood and think about the things that were instilled in me, it felt like always things that were not necessarily verbal, but things that were just understood. Like things, yes, there were things that like my mom or dad would verbally say, hey, hear this, and try to instill in me. But I think whenever I think about like the parenting from fear, I feel like I'm always fearing, what am I communicating to them that's like nonverbal almost? Like, for instance, there were, with working from home and trying to juggle all of that, while homeschooling and during this pandemic and stuff, the kids came up to me and they were joking, and they were talking about me, and they were saying, oh yeah, like dad's always on the phone, or he's telling us that we have to work. And so I was like, oh, okay, like what I think I'm doing is like being efficient with time and showing them how to do these things, but it's being interpreted as dad's always working or he's having us work. And I was like, oh crap, like I really need to like get down and play with them, because I'm being way too serious about things. Because I think like whenever I think about my childhood, I think about like certain things, like living in poverty for a decent amount of my childhood. There are certain things now that I still go to, like a restaurant, and I still look at the menu and I look to see what has like the most value. Like, oh, for this thing, for $15, I get 2 sides with this thing, like, but if I go up to like the $30 range and I just get that steak, nothing comes with the steak. And it's like the little trigger, and I'm like a 35-year-old man, like, and I'm still having these, like, I can afford either option, but I'm still having these thoughts of like, no, but if I get this other one, then I know I will be full. And this other thing that just comes with one, there's a chance that I might still be hungry. And so and so that's the fear that goes in my head as far as like, what are things that are going on in their head that maybe I'm not telling them or not instructing them to do, but is like coming out in just ordinary micro decisions kind of thing. And is being instilled in them that I don't want them to, like you were saying, turn it into their own fear or turn it into their own thing. And so we've been working to, like, the way that we've been trying to combat that is like with that little comment of like dad's working or having us work, then I intentionally like sit down with them and I, play with them and I try to get, and then I'm like, okay, if I can be more involved, then I'm doing something, right? Then I'm actually like working to show them that I care and I'm here and I'm interested in what they're doing. And so I've been trying to like be more aware of that, and being more attentive to things that they're telling me. Cause sometimes when they're little kids, like Grant and I have little kids compared to you, David. And so like sometimes little kids, and I don't know, maybe teenagers are just as blunt, but sometimes little kids can just be so straightforward because they're not, they're not really worried about the social backlash or anything like that. And so they'll just be like, here's the fact. And you're like, oh God, that hurt. You know what I mean? Like that was too direct sometimes, but,
no,
yeah.
Hey, but you know what? The other thing I was thinking is that, and just building off of something that Grant said, though, is that there are some ways that I would look and I would think that fear has been, my fears have been useful in my parenting. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that I was just thinking about was, because both my parents were gone, not all the time, but they were gone frequently. As military obligations required, I have made it a point to be involved in my kids' stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's not, and please hear what I'm saying. I'm not trying to say that my mom and dad were, absent parents who didn't care. I'm saying that time restrictions, because I wasn't the only kid in the house. I have two sisters as well. They could not be at all of my things. They could not devote extra time outside of work to activities. And so one of the things that I was always afraid of is that as a father, I would be just like my parents were. Well, I've been the opposite. I've been involved in their school activities. I've been involved in coaching them. And that's one thing that I will say is that, I'll never have any regrets. And my kids will never tell anyone that I wasn't there because I have been there, So that's kind of the non-negative side of parenting out of fear, is that there are some uses, that have actually helped. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say to that fact, like we put a big emphasis on the understanding of money with our kids. And it's not necessarily that money is like so much more important than other things, but more of understanding how money works and just the functionality of it. And that's because I think I wasn't really taught. I was always taught how not to spend money, but I wasn't really taught how to use money. And so I'm really good at like, being a freelancer, which Grant and I are, when money's tight or the projects haven't hit yet, like I'm really good at like making meals out of hardly anything, or, finding ways, to penny pinch and do all that kind of stuff. But what I found is that I didn't really understand how money worked, like in my early 20s when I was on my own, and I didn't really know how it functioned. And so we're working really hard to just explain things. Like my son, for instance, my son is super into Pokemon. And so he had a Pokemon card, and he's been watching these YouTubers, that like open up packs of Pokemon cards and talk about them, whatever. And he said, Dad, I think I have one that's valuable. And I was like, cool, like let's look it up. And so he went and found it, and it was like on eBay selling anywhere from like $200 to $400. And I was like, good Lord, holy cow. I know. I was like, okay, all right. I was like, what are we doing in here? Why are we not opening more Pokemon cards? I'm too much in the like trying to be an entrepreneur as far as like, oh my God, okay, let's buy 10 more packs and see what we can do. No, but it was fun to talk to him about, hey, this means a lot because somebody's putting value on that. And that's the value that we're seeing other people sell it for. So if you wanted to sell it, here's the steps that you would need to do. And here's what you can do in order to post it online. Right. And then if you want, that can give you more resources, like trying to use money as a resource, not necessarily tied to your character. Like that it's like a resource that you use. It just happens to be paper. It just happens to be these things. But you know, if you sell this one card, you have a good chance of selling it for maybe, $200, and then you can go buy more Pokemon things if you want to. And just trying to make it not necessarily like I want my kid to be an entrepreneur and business owner, but more from a just understanding how money works. And so even in other things that we're doing, we'll still tie it back. And that's what's interesting with parenting, I feel like, is when you are aware and you are involved, there's so many life lessons out there. And so you can tie it to different things. Like, why is this thing so expensive? And it's like, because people value that thing a lot. And so they're willing to spend money. And then you're like, remember that whole Pokemon card discussion? You know, like you have 150 other cards that people wouldn't pay $1 for, you know? And so it's just using these little micro decisions and instances to reinforce those like values, right? But that all comes, the reason I said that is that all comes from a fear of not having money.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The fear is like, oh my God, I don't have money. So for me, I don't fear whether my kids will know algebra or trigonometry or something like that. I'm like, they'll figure that stuff out. And I'm like, I'm more concerned, like, I want to teach you how to survive in the world. And I want you to be able to understand what empathy is like for other, to have empathy for other people. I think when it comes to race, I feel like probably for the first time in my life, I've had like it's had a direct impact on me because, my son is adopted from Korea and there's been a lot of Asian American discrimination lately. There was just a guy in Chinatown, I think it was, or Koreatown, that was like, I think it was an old lady that was like walking around and somebody like threw a bottle at her head and it was just like, and that for me, I'm like, oh, like now that I have a Korean American in my home, like that's a direct, like, oh, do I really need to be, like, I thought about that the other day. I was like, do I need to, what do I do with that? Like now that I have that news cycle coming at me and those kinds of things, that's the closest I've ever directly come to it.
It becomes something you can't walk away from,
Yeah, I can't just ignore it. If I ignore it, it doesn't go away, right? But then, and I think like, so like, what are other things that you can do coming up against these? Like, really what we're talking about is like a various amounts of parenting from fear in different ways, right? So what are things that we can do to not necessarily combat that, but to maybe turn it into a positive, like you said, or turn it into something that is beneficial in the future?
Yeah. And I would say also the question too, then is with that is not only how do we use parenting from fear as a positive, but how do you fear less as a father? Because not fearless, like we're never going to be fearless, but how do you not only use that as a positive, but also reduce that fear that we have of all the negative stuff? I mean, that's where I lie. I'm like, I feel like I have some positive stuff in fathering when I'm fathering from fear because I've got the anxiety and I can, whatever, but it's I don't know how to turn the fear down. And that's the trick for me is like, do either one of you know how to turn that down in addition to using fear as a positive?
Well, I think the reality is, man, we can do everything out of fear and still things go wrong. Right?
That's true.
Like I can have 50 conversations with my boys about the things that they need to do and the things that they need to say and how they need to present themselves. It still go wrong. So then the question, and this is, I'm telling you this as a person who's working through this, man, because I know what I should do, right? But waking up each morning and like finding the strength to do it, that's different.
Yeah.
Right? But what you have to do is you have to also remember, man, they got to just got to let them live.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, you
Yeah.
can do everything. I can eat right, work out right, blah, 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 and step out of the house, right? Get hit by a car, tree falls through my, my roof.
Mm-hmm.
And there went my plan to live till I'm 93, right? So, like, I think that's the other thing is being able to call it what it is, right? This is me acting out of fear. This is me responding out of fear. And then to be able to say, like, I need to take a step to let that go. So, like, here's a conversation. Man, I had a conversation with my oldest. Because again, 6'4", right? Taller than me. And I said to him, and we were talking about, how you respond to adults, and he had probably rolled his eyes at me or something. And I was like, man, you can't do that to people, and you can't just walk away from people, and then I went to the extreme of, if you do that and a police officer's talking to you or something, it could be bad for you, right? Or you're going to get fired, or someone's going to blah, blah, blah. And I was just upset, like, because what I wanted is him to understand the proper way to address someone, right? I wanted him to learn how to put those emotions away and address someone properly. But I was allowing it to take me into, like, worst case scenario. And so finally, man, I had to talk to him. I said, man, listen, I'm telling you this because you're the most important thing to me, right? You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. My kids are the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I want to do everything I can as a father to protect you. I know that my way of going about it doesn't make sense, or maybe it's not right, but I'm just coming from a good space, and I have to be better at that as well. And I think that was a big thing for me, to tell him, to acknowledge verbally what it is that I feel, and like I said, it's ongoing, man. It's daily, for me, because I recognize, like, there are things he's going to be driving here in 3 months, 6 months, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's
I was thinking about that when you said he's 15. I was just like, that's my first thought.
Well, yeah.
Is driving.
But it's the same thing, and there are things that I have some great friends that are police officers, and I've reached out to them and saying, hey, man, like, would you be able to talk to my 16-year-old basketball players who are going to begin driving, and can we make some points of connection so that you know them, and so that they know you, and so that the narratives that we see on the media can be lessened by human connection. I know Officer
That's
so-and-so.
so true. Yeah, that's such a good thing.
I know Officer so-and-so. He's a cool guy. You know what? I'm not going to have any problems with him. I'm going to, not fear him, and vice versa. Oh, I know that kid. That's Justice, man. He's a good kid. I know his parents. I don't know what the answers are. You can't change a society, and you can't change history, but creating those opportunities for connection, I hope, and to allow people to have these discussions, just one way.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, I think you make a great point about I think what's been since the social media era has started, I feel like the hard thing to swallow as a society is just our lack of empathy for others, and acting as if the world is so black and white. And trust me, that comes from a person that wants the world to be black and white. That's how I want to see the world, but it's just not that way. And just the older I've gotten, the more I've realized, even my parenting style isn't always the best, or not even the choices that I've made that I've found, or that I thought was like, this is the way, the only way, but like when you guys were talking, I thought of three things. One was a personal way that that just generally speaking, that has helped me in areas like that. And that one is meditation. And for me, that one has really, really helped, because it's like it's a process of allowing thoughts and fears and whatever's on your mind to come to the forefront, and then working and practicing how to let it go. And I feel like that can help. At least it's helped me in letting some of those big fears go, letting those kind of like what you said, David, where it's like, I've done the best that I can, and I kind of have to let go of some of it. And the other thing that came to mind was more of a sports reference. I wish it was a better reference, but it's trust the process. And even though the 76ers hasn't really come to fruition.
You're talking about Joel Embiid, right? He went to KU.
I'm talking about Joel Embiid.
He's a Jayhawk.
I know.
Okay, just bring
I thought
it back.
about not bringing it. I know. I thought about not bringing it up for that fact. But no. Trust in the process. That's another thing for me personally that's really helped as far as setting up. Hey, this is how I want to parent the kids, or my child, or whatever it is, and then trusting in yourself that like you have some values set up, and to kind of stick to that. Because I think sometimes in parenting, at least so far that I've experienced, sometimes it's like if this one thing doesn't work, you like totally reverse and go the other way and try to do the opposite. Like there was a funny not funny, but there was like a 1 week period, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 days, that I tried to be the dad that's a disciplinarian. And when they were younger, they were like 3 and 4. And I would, Sarah would tell me things that were going on at the house, while I was at work. And then I would come home and I would discipline them based on that. And I would, I was like the wait till dad comes home kind of dad. And that lasted like 3 or 4 days. And it just did not feel right for me, for anyone else. Like it just was like, this is not working. And I think that leads me to my third thing, which is really trusting in yourself and who you are, and being honest. Because I think like for me, that's not who I am. I'm not that kind of person. So it came off very inauthentic. And I think like what you're doing, David, as far as there are going to be times that you like explode or quick react to something, or, and it's always coming from like what I said earlier, like my fear of not having money. Sure. So I might get frustrated at my kids for not spending their money the way that I think that they should, or, whatever that is. And I feel like it's coming from a good spot. But I think for me, the hope is that I can communicate with them enough that when I do mess up, I can admit it, or I can say, hey, here's where I think I went wrong. And we can have that open discussion. Cause that's my parenting goal when I'm done parenting, as far as like them being in the home, is that I would still have a relationship with them outside the home. And so if that always comes back to communication, like what you said, David, where it's like, hey, I had to talk with them. I got really frustrated at him the way, from this vantage point, from this perspective. And then, but I still wanted to talk to him, because you don't want to just like oust them, right? Like you don't want to just be like, you'll never get it, you don't never understand, and alienate them. Because at the end of the day, they're just kids, they don't, there's only so much that they know.
Yeah. And honestly, between what you just said, Stephen, and David, something you said earlier, I mean, that is what it's about, right? Us as fathers is instilling those, potentially values in them, that as they grow older and they leave our homes and they start their own families, is you hope they have that kind of that core sense of like, this is who my father was, or my parents were. And this is kind of like what they instilled in me. And, I'm with you. I'm not that I'm, there are definitely times where I can be the disciplinarian parent, but I definitely tend to try and play more good cop than bad cop a lot of times. I don't know that it always works. But I'm definitely the one that like, if somebody's crying or upset, I can kind of like, oh, let me turn them into like smiling and happy again. But you know what? The feeling that comes over, like being the dad that can just go, okay, you guys do whatever you want. Like, that's not me. I wish it was, because like, that's the cool dad, right? I wish I could just be like, just do whatever you want. You're okay. Just like be safe. Right. Cause I feel like our parents were just like, It's cool if you leave the house, just like come back by dinner time. And you're like, what? Without a phone
when the
or
street lights,
anything? Like,
when the street lights come
Can you
on,
believe
come
we
back.
made it to this age?
oh my
Seriously.
goodness.
I don't know how.
If my parents knew what I was doing, like, yeah,
Wow.
right. So, right. And so that's the whole thing. Like, I couldn't imagine being that kind of parent now. And I don't know if it's just because I'm from this time period now, or because it's my anxieties and stuff that have added to it. But I will say, you know, we're talking about parenting from fear, and, you know, just a great example of this yesterday is I have a 3-year-old, and well, I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 9-month-old. Okay. So we've got a full house. It's chaos. It's full
You're
on
not
chaos.
sleeping, man.
Well, no, no, my wife's not sleeping. I'm not sleeping. Most of the kids don't sleep. It doesn't, you know, it's whatever. But the whole thing is we've been building this play set out in the backyard for a while, and the kids come out and they want to help me. And I want so badly for them to have a good experience and look back fondly going like, oh, we built this with dad, and that's why it's so special. And I've wanted so bad to just be like, yeah, here's a hammer. Go for it. But I can't, because I'm like, don't touch the hammer. You're going to kill somebody. Like, what? No. Right. And so that's my natural instinct, is to do that. And so, you know, for instance, when I have one child out there, as opposed to 3 of them at a time, I'm pretty relaxed and cool with it. Like, it's kind of
Right.
like, okay, yeah, you can climb the ladder. I'll be with you. I'll help you up there. But my 3-year-old is my little adventure guy, right? He has no fear of pretty much anything. And he came out there, and I was in the middle of working, and he starts wanting to climb the ladder. I'm like, oh, okay, here. Okay, let me help you up. And he climbs about 4 or 5 steps up this ladder. And then, you know, I help him back down. Okay, that's great. That was fun. Hey, when you do that again, let me know. Okay, great. Sure, Dad. And then I go start working. And then next thing you know, he's up the ladder again. I turn around just to see him fall off the ladder, like onto the ground. And he didn't cry and scream. He just kind of had that look like I was just on that thing. Why am I not on that thing? Right. You know, that look that we all know. And so in a weird way, I was relieved, because he experienced the experience, right?
Yes.
He had that failure. He fell off. He didn't get hurt bad enough that we had to rush him to the hospital, but he definitely,
Right, 'cause we're not doing that now.
we're not doing that now. Right. But he had the experience of, like, he fell off, it startled him, and he didn't climb up the ladder again. So that's a moment of, like, yes, a lot of times I get caught in this parenting from fear, right? Fathering from fear. But that was a moment that, like, without even thinking about it, he failed, or he, you know, did something to hurt himself, and it actually worked out for the positive, because he learned just enough that, oh, if I'm going to get on the ladder, I should probably ask Dad next time. Right. And those are the kind of moments that, like, that make me kind of take some relief, or I know that I've done something right. Now, how can I get more of those moments where they're learning like this? How can I, and it's not so much how can I set them up for them, it's how can I step back from myself, right? How can I step back as a father and say, like, okay, just let these anxieties die down for a minute so you can fail on your own.
Right.
One of the things that I've learned is I work on movie sets a lot, and I've heard a lot of different people say this, and I think it's something that I'm going to try to implement with the kids, but don't hold me to it. Okay. Cause I'm trying, I'm working through it. But, you know, I've heard people on the set say, like, hey, you asked me this. I know this part of my job, right? I know where the camera needs to be. So I'll tell someone 3 times, this is where it should be. Oh no, I think it should be over here. Nope. I'm pretty sure this should be here. I know how to do my job. No, I think it should be over here. Okay. It should be here. And then when the person says, no, it should be over here. Okay. You've said it 3 times. I've said it 3 times. I've told you what I know, like what my experience, right? Mm-hmm. And then you want to do it your way. That's fine. You will have to learn. And what'll happen is then they'll move the camera where that person wanted it. I'll have to shoot it all over again, because that was the wrong choice. Yeah. And so for me, it's this, like, when we're thinking of how are these positive steps, what are these things we can do to help alleviate the fear? Well, I can still have my fears and say, hey, you probably shouldn't do that because this could happen. But if I say it 3 times and you have to learn the hard way, then I guess you're going to have to learn the hard way. Now, I know I had to learn the hard way with everything because I was a stubborn kid. So I don't know why I would ever think I would have easy kids that would not want to learn that way. So for me, it's a matter of, like, like you said, waking up and logically this makes sense, but then you really got to push through it and you got to make yourself doing it. And for me, it's implementing that like three thing rule, right? Maybe I'm once or twice I say it, and if you continue to do it, you're just gonna have to learn on your own. So I'm gonna try to implement that, and hopefully that if anybody's listening, hopefully that can help you. But it seems positive enough. I'll see if I can get past the block and try to push through and do it. But that's for me, that's what's up next. So we'll see.
It's good stuff.
Well, awesome. Well, I mean, thank you so much, David, for coming on, man. This was so great. I'm so glad that we made this happen. And I honestly, even though it was very like, serious earlier on and stuff, I'm so glad that you at least gave your perspective, because I think that for us in It's a Dad Thing podcast, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring on other dads and show other perspectives to really just help other dads understand that they're not alone, that they're not the only ones experiencing these things. Because I think sometimes dads can be isolated, or the only thing that we really talk about is work and sports. And so it's like being able to open up and talk about those real honest things that are actually happening in homes all across the world is a big deal. And I'm so glad and so thankful that you were able to come on. So thank you so much, man.
And thank you, guys. And I just want you to know, I have started listening to your podcast, and I like what you guys are doing. I really appreciate it, because I just think it's important for people to realize that fatherhood is diverse, right? And I'm not just talking about in terms of, the obvious outward, but just the things that we struggle with, the things that we do, the ways that we try to work through our own lives, and also the responsibility that we have, for the lives of our kids and our families, And so I just appreciate you guys doing this. It's fun to listen to you guys talk about topics, and I hope this is not I hope this is not too deep. I hope someone finds that what we talked about was useful. But this has been fun, man. You guys are doing a good thing, and so I thank you.
Well, I appreciate it, David, and we very much appreciate you coming on here and being another father that's lending your voice and. We're all, I know it's cliche to say at this point because of COVID and everything, but we are all in this together. And before COVID, we were all in this together, right? We're all fathers, and we're all dealing with so much that, you can suffer quietly, or you can hear what other dads are dealing with and go, oh man, I'm really not alone here. Like these things that I'm dealing with, it's just like if you had a question, I'm pretty sure if you just type that question in Google, somebody else has typed that in, right?
Right.
It doesn't matter how weird it is, but that's fatherhood. Whatever you've dealt with, for the most part, somebody else is also dealing with at the same time. So, I will say, David, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it so much. For our listeners out there, if any of you, like David, want to enjoy more of our podcast, please remember to subscribe. If you can rate it on any of the podcasts, like Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to it, that helps us grow. It helps our algorithm, all that kind of stuff. So we can reach out to more people. And if you know any other dads out there that are listening and think they could get something from it, let us know. I mean, let them know about the podcast, and let us know. If you guys have a topic you want to talk about, if there's something that you're dealing with that you just say, hey, I feel like I'm so alone on this, reach out to us. And I guarantee you, you're not alone. So please make sure, make sure you do that. David, thank you so much for coming on. Stephen, as always, thank you for coming on and doing this. And David, I'm so glad you're one of our 10 listeners. That's so exciting.
That's great.
10 to 10 million.
Put us into the double digits.
Thank you.
Got guys. 11 now. Of course. All right. Well, thank you guys, and everybody out there. We will, I guess you'll see us or hear us on the next episode. Subscribe, do all this stuff. And guys, thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.